The pristine sidewalks of Maple Ridge Estates gleamed in the morning sunlight as Thomas Blackwell hurried toward his waiting car, his mind already focused on the board meeting that would determine his company's next quarter projections. At 45, Thomas had built his investment firm through relentless dedication and an unwavering focus on results that left little room for distractions or sentiment. His daily routine was precisely timed. Coffee at 6:30, emails until 7:15. Then straight to the office where 12-hour days were the norm, rather than the exception. Thomas valued efficiency above all else, and unexpected interruptions ranked high among his pet peeves, which made the small voice that called out to him particularly unwelcome. "Excuse me, mister?" Thomas paused at his car door, turning to see a little girl of perhaps 5 or 6 years old standing at the edge of the neighboring driveway. She wore a bright yellow jacket over a pink dress, her dark hair held back with a small butterfly clip, and carried a backpack that seemed almost as large as she was. "Yes?" Thomas replied curtly, checking his watch with obvious impatience. "Will you walk me to school?" the child asked with the straightforward honesty that only very young children possess. "My name is Sophie, and I live right there." She pointed to the house next door, which Thomas had barely noticed despite living beside it for 3 years. Thomas stared at her in bewilderment. "Walk you to school? Where are your parents?" Sophie's expression grew slightly sad. "Mommy had to go to work very early today and Daddy lives far away now. Mrs. Patterson next door usually walks with me, but she is sick today." Thomas felt a flicker of irritation at this unexpected complication to his morning schedule. "Surely, there is someone else who can help you. I have important business meetings." Sophie considered this seriously, then shook her head. "I asked everyone I know yesterday. Mrs. Patterson said if she was still sick today, I should ask a grown-up neighbor to help me get to school safely." The logical part of Thomas's mind immediately identified several reasons why this was not his responsibility. He did not know this child or her family. He had urgent business to attend to. Getting involved in neighbors' childcare issues would set an uncomfortable precedent. But something about Sophie's calm acceptance of her situation gave him pause. She was not crying or demanding. She had simply identified a problem and was methodically seeking a solution, approaching the task with a matter-of-fact determination that reminded Thomas of his own approach to business challenges. "How far is your school?" he asked despite himself. "Just 3 blocks that way," Sophie said, pointing down the tree-lined street. "It takes about 10 minutes to walk there. Mrs. Patterson says the crossing guard knows me, so I can walk home by myself after school." Thomas checked his watch again. 10 minutes would make him slightly late for his pre-meeting preparation, but not catastrophically so. And there was something unsettling about the idea of a small child walking alone through the neighborhood, even in this safe area. "All right," he said with resignation, "but we need to walk quickly. I have appointments." Sophie's face lit up with genuine gratitude. "Thank you very much, mister. I promise I can walk fast." As they set off down the sidewalk, Thomas found himself unconsciously adjusting his longer stride to match Sophie's shorter steps. She chattered easily as they walked, pointing out houses where her friends lived and sharing observations about the neighborhood that Thomas had never noticed despite his years of residence. "That house has the prettiest flowers," Sophie said, gesturing toward a garden that Thomas had passed hundreds of times without truly seeing. "And Mrs. Chen in the blue house always waves at me from her window when I walk to school." True to Sophie's prediction, an elderly woman appeared at the window of the blue house and waved enthusiastically. Without thinking, Thomas found himself waving back, earning a delighted smile from Sophie. "She likes you," Sophie announced with satisfaction. "Mrs. Chen is very nice. She sometimes gives me cookies that she makes." At the school crossing, the uniformed guard greeted Sophie warmly. "Good morning, Sophie. Who is your walking companion today?" "This is my neighbor," Sophie replied proudly. "He helped me get to school safely when Mrs. Patterson was sick." The crossing guard smiled at Thomas with approval. "That was very kind of you. Sophie is one of our most responsible students." As they reached the school entrance, Sophie turned to Thomas with serious eyes. "Thank you for walking with me. It was much more fun than walking alone." She paused, then added with the directness that had characterized their entire interaction, "Will you walk with me again tomorrow if Mrs. Patterson is still sick?" Thomas looked down at this small person who had somehow managed to disrupt his carefully ordered morning while simultaneously making it oddly more pleasant. "We will see," he said, which was as close to a commitment as his cautious nature would allow. The next morning, Thomas found himself checking his watch at 7:15, then glancing toward the neighboring house with an expectation he did not fully understand. When Sophie appeared at her front door looking hopefully in his direction, Thomas felt something shift in his chest. "Good morning, Sophie," he called out, surprising himself. "Ready for our walk?" Over the following weeks, the morning walks became a routine that Thomas found himself looking forward to despite his initial resistance. Sophie's unfiltered observations about the world around them began to change how Thomas saw his own neighborhood, and gradually, how he approached his daily life. Sophie taught him the names of the flowers in Mrs. Chen's garden, introduced him to the retired teacher who lived 2 streets over and always had fascinating stories to share, and showed him the small details of community life that his previous rush to the office had caused him to miss. In return, Thomas began to appreciate qualities in Sophie that reminded him of his own best business instincts. She was observant, persistent, and remarkably good at finding practical solutions to problems. When rain threatened their morning walk, Sophie appeared with an umbrella large enough for both of them. When construction blocked their usual route, she had already scouted an alternative path. The transformation in Thomas's perspective became clear the morning Sophie appeared at his door with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Patterson is in the hospital," she said quietly. "Mommy said she is very sick and might not be able to walk with me anymore." Thomas knelt down to Sophie's level without hesitation. "I'm sorry to hear that, Sophie. Mrs. Patterson is lucky to have such a caring friend." They paused, then continued with a certainty that surprised him. "But you do not need to worry about getting to school. I will walk with you every morning for as long as you need me to." Sophie's face brightened with relief and gratitude. "Really? Every day?" "Every day," Thomas confirmed. "We are neighbors, and neighbors look out for each other." Months later, Thomas reflected on how a simple request from a 5-year-old had fundamentally altered his understanding of what constituted a successful life. His business remained profitable, but his morning walks with Sophie had taught him that the most meaningful achievements often have nothing to do with quarterly reports or investment returns. Sophie had shown him that community is built through small, consistent acts of care and attention. That slowing down enough to truly see your surroundings reveals beauty and connection that rush and efficiency cannot provide. And that sometimes the most important appointments on your calendar are the ones that involve helping someone else navigate their day with greater safety and happiness. The grumpy CEO who had once viewed neighborly interaction as an unwelcome distraction had discovered that the daily walk to school had become the most valuable part of his day. Not because it contributed to his business success, but because it had reconnected him with the simple human satisfaction of being useful to someone who needed him. And Sophie, who had simply needed a safe way to get to school, had gained something much more valuable. A dependable adult who had learned that the best investments are often the ones we make in the people right next to us.